këtë intervistë për të kuptuar peshën dhe aftësinë që ka pas me Gonigal për të futur në listë të zezë persona që ai mendonte se e meritojnë të futeshin ose paguaj për të futur. Ndjekim këtë intervistë ekskluzive dhe pastaj kthehemi në studio me një panel prej 4 të ftuarish.
Përshëndetje, pak ditë më parë ne kemi përcjell një artikull të publikuar në rrjetin prestigjioz amerikan CNN ku bëhej një analizë e gjerë dhe e gjatë aktivitetit të ish shefit kundër inteligjencës në FBI për New Yorkun, zotit Charles McGonigal, i cili siç e dim është në hetim në Shtetet e Bashkuara të Amerikës për 2 dosje. Njëra dosje që e lidh atë me favorizimet që ai ka bërë, dyshimet për favorizim për llogaritë oligarkut rus Oleg Deripaska, dhe një tjetër dosje që hetohet nga distrikti i Kolumbias, ku në këtë hetim zoti McGonigal hetohet sa i takon dyshime për pastrime parash, por edhe për lidhjet që ai ka patur me njerëz pranë dhe me vetë kryeministrin e Shqipërisë Edi Rama. Pjesë e këtij artikulli të cituar si burim nga ana e CNN ishte edhe një ish agjent i FBI-s, i quajtur zoti Peter Lapp, të cilin unë do ta kem sonte në një intervistë drejt prezidentit nga Shtetet e Bashkuara të Amerikës për të kuptuar diçka më tepër rreth asaj që në Shtetet e Bashkuara të Amerikës njihet si skandali me Gonigal, ndërkohë që ne këtu në Shqipëri e kemi pak gëzuar si Ramagate. Zoti Lapp, unë ju falenderoj që pranuat të komunikoni me ne sot në Syri Televizion.
Thank you for having me.
Zoti Lapp, në një intervistë për CNN ju keni deklaruar se afera McGonigal ishte një siklet. Si u ndjet kur e dëgjuat për herë të parë këtë informacion dhe kur e morët për herë të parë informacionin që ish shefi juaj ishte në një hetim nga FBI?
Well, just to clarify, I think Charlie's behavior was an embarrassment to the FBI. I think the FBI has handled itself pretty well in prosecuting and investigating him very thoroughly since the allegation was made to them at some point in time. But I think it is embarrassing to his behavior to the FBI. I first learned of Charlie's alleged behavior back in the fall. There was an article in a Business Insider magazine here in the United States that had talked about some of the information that we're now seeing public from the indictments and the news coverage around his arrest. So it's been about 6 months. I was surprised, frankly, to hear. I won't say that I thought very highly of Charlie back then when we were working together, but this behavior was surprising to me. I always thought he was an ethical person and obviously not a criminal. And it seems to be that he's gone astray since our time together working with each other.
Zoti Lapp, ju keni punuar me zotin McGonigal. Si e njihni atë dhe si do ta përshkruani bashkëpunimin që keni patur me zotin McGonigal gjatë kohës që kishit praktikisht e pror?
Yeah, I worked for him directly from January of 2012 until about August or September of that year. It was not a pleasant experience. He had a pretty significant ego and was very career driven. He had a lot of ambition, wanted to go to a high level, and I definitely think it affected his management style. Our time together was very short, and unfortunately it ended where I was asked to leave to go to another position elsewhere in the government. He was tough to deal with as a boss. He was by far probably my worst boss I ever had. He was well regarded by his peers. Obviously his management thought very highly of him. He kept getting promoted from the time I worked for him, but the way he treated some of his subordinates, including me, was pretty hostile and rather unprofessional from what I remember and what I experienced.
Ndërkohë, ju për CNN keni deklaruar se gjatë kohës kur keni bashkëpunuar me Charles McGonigal, nuk keni vënë re gjëra të dyshimta në aktivitetin e tij. Po tani që akuzat janë bërë publike, a mund të bëni, si më thon, një lloj lidhje apo mund të ngrini ju dyshime për mënyrën se ai sille me ju në raport dhe gjithmonë duke referuar asaj që është publikuar nga të dy akuzat, si ajo e Manhattanit ashtu dhe ajo e Kolumbias?
Yeah, he had a very strong, healthy ego, had a lot of ambition, wanted to rise to a pretty high level, and that was very transparent in how he conducted himself in the position he was in when I worked for him. There was nothing that I could see at that time that would suggest that he was going to do the things he's alleged to have done. I never knew him to have financial issues. I never knew him to, this behavior was really shocking to me. I don't know if it was a situation where he just felt he was smarter than everyone. He definitely thought of himself pretty highly while he was at the FBI, and maybe it's a situation where he just had a little too much self-confidence and thought a little too highly of himself. Clearly, he seemed to have been driven by money and was open for business, both before he retired from the FBI and then certainly just after for several years. He seems to be very financially driven, and for whatever reason has lost his moral compass. He really lost that fidelity, bravery, and the integrity part, which is what the FBI stands for in terms of its values. He really lost his way, and it's sad to see, even though we didn't have a good experience together, to see someone who you knew and worked with go down this corrupt road, if you will, allegedly, is disappointing and sad.
Sigurisht që neve në intereson shumë, duhet thënë, raporti dhe që ai ka patur me qytetar shqiptar amerikan apo edhe me vetë kryeministrin e Shqipërisë, siç rezulton si në kërkesën që është bërë nga juria e madhe me Sufinën ose Subuenën, siç njihet ndryshe në Shtetet Bashkuara të Amerikës, por edhe me dosjen përfundimtare. Pyetja e parë është, sipas aktit akuzës që është bërë publike, duket se me Gonigal u merrte para qytetarëve shqiptar ndërsa ishte ende në FBI. Me shumë mundësi FBI duhet të ketë më shumë informacion se sa ne dim.
Well, absolutely. The FBI never releases everything, all of the evidence that it has in an indictment. They work very hard to show just enough, and that would include the Department of Justice as well. There are attorneys that were working this case as prosecutors. They want to show enough evidence to prove the elements of the crime, get the indictment, but I'm sure there's information that they're holding back for investigative purposes or perhaps waiting for a trial. My sense, I don't know, but my sense is that there will be a plea agreement in this case, and perhaps we may not know more than what the alleged behavior is stated in the indictment. I was really surprised to read in the indictment that he had made contact with a head of state for a foreign country, you know, your foreign country.
Kur thoni që gjatë të gjykimit mund të dalin prova të reja dhe që sigurisht FBI ka më shumë informacion, këto informacione do të dalin në çdo rast apo nëse zoti Gonigal vetë shpallet fajtor, këto fakte, këto akuza mund të bëhen publike apo mund mbeten gjithmonë sekreti FBI-s, thjesht për të kuptuar më shumë?
If there's a public trial, the government will have to put a lot more evidence that it has and put in the indictment. It will have to have witnesses. There will have to be a lot of records that are provided for trial if that occurs. My suspicion is that it's in the government and Charlie McGonagall's best interest to come to a plea agreement. If there's a plea, there may not be much more information that's already been released by the government in the indictment that you're able to read now online. But if there's a trial, there'll be a lot more evidence that will have to be presented. And it's just my suspicion that a case like this, you know, is going to be very costly. Charlie has been indicted not just in one jurisdiction, but two, which is noteworthy in and of itself. That is a rarity. Therefore, he would have two separate trials. And that would be incredibly expensive for him to defend and litigate. So that's why I sense that there's probably going to be a plea sooner rather than later.
Derisa të vlerësoj. Ndërkohë sa i takon akuzës në vetvete, pra që zoti Gonigal akuzohet se ka sulmuar si kundërshtarët politik të kryeministrit të Shqipërisë. Keni një koment për këtë?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, Charlie, in my mind, was open for business. He was looking to make as much money as he could with whomever. I think he picked some safe people in the sense that he was, dealing with folks from your country that are not necessarily, we're not talking Russia, we're talking, countries that have good relationships with the United States. I think that, it's interesting to see where he goes with this.
A ka ndodhur më parë ku agjent korruptuar të jenë përdorur nga aktorë të huaj politik si qenë sulmues kundër kundërshtarëve të tyre politik?
Certainly not to this extent. I would think that there may have been cases here in the United States of police officers or FBI agents, but in more local politics here in the United States, but not on an international scale like we're seeing with the McGonigal case. I think from that regard, this is a pretty unprecedented case, if you will.
Ndërkohë, sipas mediave, zoti Lapp, zoti McGonigal mund të ketë përdorur aksesin e tij në FBI për të ndihmuar individët që ishin të caktuar si non grata që t'u hiqe emërtimi në shkëmbim të parave. A është e mundur kjo praktikisht?
Yeah, that's another thing where I think Charlie was over-embellishing his role and ability to do that. I think that, again, he's a small player in the totality of the United States government. He was a senior official at the FBI, but I don't think he had the leverage or the ability to even influence whether an individual is especially if an individual is taken off a persona non grata list. Now, obviously, when we're talking about intelligence operations, if that were the case, he would have influence on putting someone on a list, but taking someone off would be pretty difficult for someone in Charlie's position, and I think he, in this case, in my mind, over-embellished what he could deliver for folks in your country.
Në fakt, në një farë mënyrë më pararendet edhe pyetjen e radhës që kisha. Në të njëjtën mënyrë ka raporte të paktën të pakonfirmuara se zoti McGonigal mund të ketë luajtur një rol në përcaktimin e kundërshtarëve politik të kryeministrit shqiptar Edi Rama si persona non grata. Pak a shumë e konfirmuat në përgjigjen tuaj të parë.
Well, Charlie would have been in a position to drive and open an investigation if there was predication that merited there was a criminal violation allegation or an intelligence operation allegation. He certainly could have influenced the opening of an investigation. Where that investigation would go, he would lose control to a degree because the investigators are going to conduct their interviews, their investigation, and we would see where that would go. But he certainly would have an ability to get an investigation opened up if there's justifiable predicate.
Ndërkohë, zoti Lapp, raportohet paktën sipas aktakuzës së ngritur nga distrikti i Kolumbias se zoti McGonigal është takuar 5 herë me kryeministrin e Shqipërisë Edi Rama, 4 herë këtu në Tiranë në zyrën e tij dhe 1 herë madje edhe në New York ku ka arritur edhe të ftojë zotin Rama, paktën siç raportohet, në zyrat e FBI-s. Së pari, a është normale që një zyrtar i lartë në këtë pozicion që ka patur zoti McGonigal gjatë kohës në FBI të takohet kaq shpesh, po e quaj kështu unë, me një kryeministër të një vendi të huaj?
It's absolutely unusual. I mean, again, we're talking about your prime minister being a head of state. Normally, even a senior official from the FBI would be having to get permission from our State Department and pretty high up in the executive branch to have any meeting with a head of state. And that is highly unusual. Not normal business, and especially, maybe 1 meeting, but 5 meetings is completely out of character and out of a normal way of doing business. We would definitely, the State Department, the U.S. State Department would primarily interact with heads of states like your former prime minister.
A do duhej që ambasada e Shtetit Bashkuar të Amerikës këtu në Tiranë të ishte në dieni rreth prezencës së një zyrtari kaq të lartë të FBI-s plot 4 herë në Tiranë dhe për takimet që ai ka zhvilluar me kryeministrin e Shqipërisë zotin Edi Rama?
100%. Absolutely. That coordination, if it was official business, and Charlie seemingly was skirting this official business / personal business, but if it was official business, that absolutely would have had to have been coordinated with the local embassy in your country. And clearly, for obvious reasons, that was not. So again, completely against protocol, just completely unusual that someone of Charlie, even if Charlie's level at the FBI would be meeting with your prime minister, that's just completely unbelievable, quite frankly.
Dhe a është e mundur që një zyrtar kaq i lartë i FBI-s të vjerë 4 herë në Tiranë dhe ambasada e Shtetit Bashkuar të Amerikës të mos jetë në gjendje ta identifikojë qoftë edhe një herë prezencën e tij në Tiranë?
Well, if Charlie's on vacation, which I don't know if some of those trips were vacation and some of those were under some kind of ruse of official business. It would be unusual for someone of Charlie's position to go to a foreign country that often. On official business, he would have had to have let the State Department know. There would have been a whole lot of inter-U.S. government coordination that clearly did not occur. And that's kind of unfortunate at this stage, because perhaps some folks would have figured out that something was wrong here, but Charlie would have had to have volunteered that information, and obviously if he did, he would have caused himself to be under scrutiny even sooner.
Ndërkohë, kam edhe një pyetje tjetër për këtë çështje. A mundet një drejtues I lartë FBI-s, në këtë rast ish pozicioni që ka patur zoti Charles McGonigal, të diktojë një qeverie, qoftë edhe aleate të Shtetit Bashkuar të Amerikës, se cilët tendera duhet t'japi dhe çfarë duhet ketë parasysh në dhënien e tenderave publik? Pra, është në praktikën e FBI-s ky lloj misioni? Nëse mund ta jepni këtë përgjigje, kuptohet.
Yeah, absolutely not. This is not the FBI conducts investigations, and this is a behavior by any representative of the FBI that's completely abnormal to what is normal course of business. We would deal with, frankly, your version of the FBI if there was an investigation involving individuals in your country that we needed to investigate, talk to, interview. That would all go through official channels. Charlie seemed to have his own unofficial channels to people within your government, and I think it's completely unusual and beyond protocol that would happen at the FBI in normal situations.
E kuptoj. Në intervistë dhënë për seksionin shqiptar të Euronews, ish e dashura e McGonigal ka deklaruar se Charlie McGonigal komunikonte me kryeministrin shqiptar Edi Rama përmes një programi të koduar që përdoret nga aparati I sigurisë kombëtare amerikane, mos gabojmë quhet VISAT. Nëse kjo është e vërtetë, si mundet që një zyrtar I huaj të ketë akses në programe të tilla komunikimi, zoti Lapp?
Well, I am familiar with a lot of apps out there, Signal, WhatsApp, a variety of different apps that a lot of people do communicate with each other in an encrypted way. So certainly it's a little suspicious, but it's understandable that they would want to keep their conversations from being read by someone who shouldn't read that. Maybe, the U.S. intelligence community, for example.
Ndërkohë, kam edhe një pyetje tjetër sa takon prezencës oligarkut Oleg Deripaska në mënyra të çuditshme në disa tendera në Shqipëri. A shikoni unë një lidhje ndërmjet prezencës së Oleg Deripaskës në Shqipëri dhe aktivitetit që ka patur zoti McGonigal gjatë kohës kur ishte shefi FBI-s dhe më mbrapa? Tashmë që faktet janë bërë publike dhe kemi 2 dosje mbi këtë çështje. Por qytetërisht Oleg Deripaska rezulton edhe me aktivitetin e tij që tentonte të ndikonte përmes aktivitetit të zotit McGonigal në Shtetet Bashkuara të Amerikës, por rezulton që e kemi edhe këtu në Shqipëri me 2 investime, njëri për cilave është strategjike dhe është firmosur nga qeveria shqiptare.
Yeah, it's not surprising that Mr. Deripaska and Charlie would meet together in Albania. I mean, if it's a country that they both are convenient to, can get into and out of with ease. At some point in time, if Charlie's going to work for Deripaska like that, you're going to have to meet and talk business and do that in a private setting. And it seems like both seem to feel comfortable with traveling to a third country like Albania.
Pyetja e fundit, zoti Lapp, e konsideroni aktivitetin e zotit McGonigal nga 2 dosjet që kemi parë deri tani, një aktivitet spionazhi, korrupsion, sjellje e pahishme apo të gjitha këto bashkë?
Well, so far the government has not shown any evidence that there's an allegation of espionage. All of us that know Charlie, that worked counterintelligence and worked espionage, we are really hopeful and pray that Charlie did have a moral line that he would not cross. We're hopeful that he didn't pass classified information. He was clearly open for business, and it would require him to have a line that he wouldn't cross about whether he would commit espionage or not. My sense is that he did not. The government, if it had evidence that he committed espionage, Having worked espionage cases before significantly, they would not, our government would not let someone like Charlie walk out of prison if it had evidence of him committing espionage. So my hope is that this is just a corruption case. This is, Charlie clearly tarnished the FBI badge. He clearly tarnished the Bureau. It's unethical. The behavior is alleged to be illegal, but I think this is hopefully just a corruption case and not corruption and espionage. That would be what our government's biggest fear would be.
Edhe një pyetje fundit, zoti Lapp. Sufina ose Suprema e jurisë së madhe në Shtetet e Bashkuara të Amerikës kërkonte ndër të tjera që të verifikoheshin të gjithë komunikimet elektronike ose të përgjuara në çdo rast edhe mes qeverisë shqiptare dhe kryeministit Edi Ramës si dhe zotit Megonigal. A është e mundur që nëse është e nevojshme gjatë procesit që do zhvillohet nga distrikti i Kolumbias të kërkohet edhe dëshmia e zotit Edi Rama nëse është e nevojshme për të zbardhur atë që është dosja me Gonigal atje?
Well, that would be pretty unprecedented for the Department of Justice to ask a head of state of a foreign country to come in and testify against someone that, like Charlie. I don't know that will ever happen. Certainly, he would have information that would enrich the investigation, but to ask your prime minister to come in and testify at a trial would be pretty historic. So I think that's part of why, hopefully, for all, that there will be a plea agreement very quickly. And then our government, the FBI, the Department of Justice, can get a better understanding of whether Charlie did have a line that he wouldn't cross. What exactly did he do? Because any plea agreement would include a full debriefing of Charlie by the FBI in terms of what he did, when he did it, and the extent of what he provided to all the folks that are involved in the indictments.
Zoti Lapp, ju falenderoj shumë për këtë komunikim tonin.
Thanks for having me.
Mirë të nderuar televizionistë, kjo ka qenë biseda që unë kam zhvilluar me ish agjentin e FBI-s, zotin Peter Lapp, një ish vartës i shefit të FBI-s kundër inteligjencës në New York, zotit Charles Megonigal, në cilin kemi diskutuar pikërisht të gjithë atë, le të themi, prezencë që ai ka patur gjatë kohës kur Megonigal drejtonte FBI-n e New Yorkut, mënyrën se si ai sillej atë aftësinë që kishte në dorë, por edhe, si më thënë, ato që është kryeçështja të paktën në Shqipëri, sa i takon njërës prej dosjeve që po hetohet në Shtetet e Bashkuara të Amerikës, raportet që Charles Megonigal ka patur gjatë 4-5 takimeve me kryeministrin Edi Rama, 4 kujtëm në Tiranë, 1 në Shtetet e Bashkuara të Amerikës, dhe një deklaratë mjaft interesante që zoti Lapp bëri gjatë kohës kur ishte në bisedë me mua, kur tha që vërtet zoti Megonigal nuk kishte mundësinë për të hequr non gratën askujt dhe ndoshta ai mund ta ketë përdorur, si më thënë, autoritetin e tij për ta shitur këtë gjë, por ama kishte mundësinë për të bërë një gjë tjetër, atë për të hapur hetime për njerëz të cilët mundësisht mund të shpalleshin non grata nga Shtetet